Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
This programme has been brought to you by the Happy Confident Company. Our clinically approved, ready-to-go wellbeing and mental health programme will help your pupils thrive. In only 10 minutes a day, you'll be able to deliver social and emotional learning and wellbeing tools throughout your school. To find out more, visit us at www.happyconfident.com.
It's time for a fresh start to language learning. Pearson EdXL's new student-centred French, German and Spanish 2024 GCSEs cater to the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability or reason for studying. Rooted in learned language knowledge, their assessments are transparent and accessible, allowing all students to showcase their language skills. Through inclusive and relatable content, the new Pearson EdXL MFL GCSEs build a shared cultural capital that helps students develop an understanding of and appreciation for the wider world. Find out more at go.pearson.com/MFL GCSE 24.
Good evening, edu folk, and welcome to what promises to be a very big education tonight. I think there's an awful lot going on in the world of education at the moment. I mean, it's never dull. That is for certain. So while we are waiting for everybody to join us this evening, including our host Brent, and I think Adam is joining him this evening, I'm not quite sure, I will check in a moment. I just want to remind you of our delightful sponsors at the moment. So we've got Happy Confident Company, and for 10 minutes a day, if you want to look after the well-being of your class and of yourself as a teacher, then you need to go to happyconfident.com and enjoy all the resources they have to offer there. We've also got Pearson EdXL's new student-centred French, German and Spanish 2024 GCSEs coming into play next year, which will be very exciting. And that is rooted in learned language knowledge, and their assessments are transparent and accessible, and it's going to allow all students to showcase their language skills, very important, through inclusive and relatable content. And if you want to know more about that, you can go to go.pearson.com/MFL GCSE 24. And we are just currently still waiting for our host to join us, but I can see the lovely Tom HB is in with us as well. So Tom, glad to have you with us. I hope all is well your side. Well, who else have we got? We've got Alex in as well. Good evening, Tom. How are you?
Good evening, Lucy. I am okay, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good sir, good sir. Are you creeping slowly towards the end of term?
12 more days.
12
more days. 25th of July, and amazingly, this is amazing for those of you who know me and where I work, I'm back on the 4th of September.
Okay, so that's not bad. So you've got...
In the past, I've been back on the 31st of August, or the 1st of September, some weird stuff like that. To actually go back on a few days into September and actually only have the kids back from the 6th of September, I'm really looking forward to actually having a proper summer break.
Oh, fantastic.
Although I know that yours is at least 2 weeks in the running.
Yeah, I've been off for a little bit, and I'm back, I think, around the same time as you, but I've got to go in a little bit early because we have insets, and we've got a new head teacher to welcome and all sorts going on. So we'll be, I'm not going to wish the time away, put it that way.
Busy times. Anyway, we are waiting for Brent, aren't we?
We are.
But yeah, this is education tonight for those of you who are joining us for the first time. I had a very warm welcome if that is you. We've had quite a busy couple of days in terms of the news, haven't we?
Yeah.
So yesterday, the NASUWT, which is the second largest education union in the United Kingdom, in England in this case, announced that it had passed the threshold for strike action. 52% of teachers voted in their pay ballot, which meant that NASWT would be taking strike action. However, when you dug into it a little bit more carefully, you'll have noticed that NASWT had a disaggregated ballot, which meant that they weren't voting as a country, but actually voting as individual schools. So yesterday, the big news was that some schools, some NASWT members in schools would be going on strike, but not others if it didn't meet the threshold. All of that news about NASWT was completely blown out of the water and burst into irrelevance today. because of the huge news that it seems as if we're going to have an end to the strikes. And in fact, all four education unions have suspended pay ballots and suspended any talks of further industrial action, because they're going to be putting the government's latest offer to their members. The NEU has a meeting on Monday on Zoom at 5 p.m. and Kevin Courtney and Mary Bowstead will be putting to their members the reason why they are recommending that they accept the government's pay offer. Now, what is the pay offer, I hear you ask? And if you've been living under a rock for the last 4 or 5 hours, you won't know what the pay offer is. The government has promised that it will fulfil and accept the recommendations of the STRB, which recommends teacher pay. And they are recommending 6.5% increase for teachers, which is in line with other public sector increases. The big question, however, is where on earth the money is going to be coming from. And it's a big question because it looks as if this pay offer, which all four education unions are going to be recommending, is a half-funded offer. 3%, 6.5%, will be coming from the Department for Education. There has been they've underspent in some areas, and rather than the money going back to a treasury, the money is going to be going towards teachers. So that's where 3% of it is coming from existing spending within the Department for Education. However, those of you who are good at maths will know that 6.5 minus 3 is 3.5. And this 3.5%, the government and the unions are expecting head teachers and school business managers in schools to find this money from existing budgets. Now, the problem is this will come from money which has already been given to schools. However, many head teachers will be able to tell you that this money has already been spent on paying rising energy bills and meeting the cost of living crisis, which is affecting schools as institutions as much as families. So there's this big question about this 3.5%. The unions are saying that schools have already budgeted for this 3.5%, and therefore all they need is the extra new money, the extra 3%, which is coming from the DFE. However, we at Teachers Talk Radio have spoken to head teachers who have said that they had not budgeted for 3.5%. They had budgeted for 3%, they budgeted for a fully funded pay offer, because that is what the NEU in particular was telling its members it was going to fight for, a fully funded pay offer. And so some head teachers are not prepared and simply not ready to find this 3.5% from extra budgets. So that's been a bit of a hoo-ha today. An extra thing, of course, is that Mary Bowstead, who is Joint General Secretary of the NEU, has admitted that not all schools will be able to afford this pay rise, which the NEU is recommending to its members that it will accept. And therefore, there's going to be a hardship fund for those schools which can't afford that. We've also been told by a senior union source that this hardship fund may increase in value over time, but we don't have any figures as to by what amount. Anyway, we're going to wait for Brent to call in while I've been holding the fort. Brent is always turning up fashionably late, or clearly he needs to set his watch back 10 minutes or so that he's on time to education tonight. It's like those students, isn't it, who sort of who stroll in without caring the world, go, "Sorry, I'm late, sir," and you're like, "Well, where were you?" It's like, "Oh, I was in inclusion, or I was at the pupil support centre, or I was at the toilet," and they don't really understand why they're late, and they don't really care. But anyway, Brent is going to do the whole show because he does care about being on time and he does care about hosting, and therefore Brent's going to tell us all why you should accept this 6.5% offer as the resident NEU man at Teachers Talk Radio. Brent, it's all yours. Once he's worked out how to unmute himself, I should add.
Oh, now I've worked out I've unmuted myself. There we are. Sorry I'm late, sir. I have been in the waiting room for a minute, but my daughter was a little bit difficult putting her to sleep tonight. So that's my reason. I think I'm going to have to push back education tonight. We're now have 10 or 15 minutes in schedule with my daughter's sleep patterns. But there we go.
All is forgiven, Brent. All is forgiven.
You can always use your children as an excuse. I've never had that one before. Gee, sir, I'm late. Why is that? My daughter didn't want to go to sleep. Yeah, really, really, really interesting today. I think there's a little bit of out of sync now with the union. I think there's going to be a lot of discussion. I kind of got sort of advanced wind of this a couple of days ago with some of the online forums. The NEU and union forums were starting to discuss the 6.5. And obviously, some people were aware that there was some like back channel negotiations. It felt a little bit like Cold War. You know, somebody got on the hotline, and obviously we then sort of knew that there was something going on, and certainly the 6.5 kept getting banded out within circles. And of course, the key sort of red line for many of us is the funding. It has to be fully funded, and that kept coming across from many members. Some, of course, union reps, some were saying, well, the idea of a rep is to represent the views of, you know, the wider membership. And that's important to note that, you know, you're talking a huge union, one of the largest unions in the country with 500,000 members. And of course, you are a broad church then with a massive diversity of opinion.
Are we really at 7:40 p.m. getting into Burkean notions of representative democracy here, Brent?
Well,
here's a question then. Are NEU reps, are they really representatives, or are they delegates?
I think they're a combination of both. I've never gone to I've got enough to do without going to conference. I've never gone to an NEU conference. I'd love to, but again, if I turn around to my wife and said, long suffering as she is with all the different things that I do, never mind be a teacher on top of all the political stuff that I do and local campaigning and different issues, I just wouldn't have the time to. So no, union reps come and I've been to so many different sort of union rep meetings and met such a diversity of individuals. Some people fall into it because they are the only person in the school that seems to sort of do anything. Some people obviously feel politically that they want to be a union rep, and others just, it's a voluntary position. You do it because you care. You do it because you want to improve the conditions in the school that you work in. And there is no sort of how do I call it? There is no sort of DNA to a union rep. You know, they come in all sort of forms. But what was definitely clear from all the union reps I was speaking to was, you know, we're in a crisis situation. Schools need funding, and certainly anything that has to be done has to be fully funded. This afternoon, there was palpable anger from some quarters, and I'm not misquoting some individuals, but there is definitely sort of a disappointment, I'd say, from some individuals. There was a lot of people searching around going, what does this mean? That was the most frequently asked question this afternoon I had during my sports day, as I scrambled for a signal today to try and find out what was going on while throwing a javelin. So while finding out what was going on in the middle of sports day, I was trying to get tidbits of information. And one of the things I did notice was some contradictions. The government was saying one thing, the media was reporting slightly different, and then the union was saying there was a lot of rumors and conjecture, and some individuals rightly are saying, well, let's see what the details are. Let's make a judgment when we know all the facts at the moment. But what is quite interesting to note is that there is a joint statement, and the joint statement contains both Mary, Kevin, and also Daniel Kebedy. And that is
and the other unions,
and the other unions. So
the government, and Gillian Keegan, and Rishi Sunak,
which is very, very interesting. And I think one of my colleagues, obviously an historian, did look at that and think, is this a Munich piece of paper? So those of us who are historians would know exactly what that means. Is this, we will have peace in our time?
Munich? Is it Yalta? Is it Magna Carta? What is it? I don't know.
Oh, well, it's definitely not Magna Carta. Let's be honest about that. Magna Carta would be something earth-shaking that would be there as a legacy for the next 800 years. I don't know if this thing's going to last 8 months.
I think you wildly overestimate the significance of Magna Carta there, Brent, but that's a discussion for another day.
I think it's Magna Carta is one of the greatest achievements of this island. But then again, that's coming from somebody who believes in democracy. No, the point being is that there was a definite feeling that this is not acceptable. Now, I'm only judging what from the individuals I've come across and forums that I'm involved in, which I have to be careful that's not an echo chamber. So I'd be interested, and this is what the function of tonight is. I'd be interested to see what some of our callers think, what some people within the profession think, because my honest read, this is not Teachers Talk Radio, this is my own personal opinion. And this is my opinion on it. I think we were never as more powerful as we are about to become. I think just at the moment when the teaching profession was about to unite, all the different factions, the two largest unions, plus the head teachers union, just at that moment, the day after NAS votes to go on strike, join the rest of the NEU plus, and it seems that, I think the head teachers union were indicating that they were going that way as well. Just at the moment when we're most united and most powerful, the day afterwards, this announcement comes. And the cynic and the political beast in me cannot help but think that the timing of that is quite crucial if you wanted to divide the profession. Because one of the weaknesses of the teaching profession is, we hadn't got everybody out. We didn't get the whole profession to shut every single school down. The strikes were effective to a point, but it didn't cause, especially the primary sector. And some of my NEU colleagues, this might influence their decisions to finish with striking and vote yes to this pay deal. We are asked to be out 8 days is a big ask for people. And there was within that a settling in of, it's a big sacrifice to ask one union to take that hit. Mm-hmm. So as much as I am not satisfied with that personally, you have to put that in the context of, is that the best that they could do? Is much I frame that as again of Munich of what are you meant to do when you're up against a government who is going to say no regardless? Is this the best that could be done with the hand they're dealt with?
I think there are two key questions, Brent. First of all, Patrick Roach, do you think he's going to be breathing a sigh of relief after the NASWA screw-up ballot yesterday of a disaggregated ballot, which means that some members would be allowed to strike and some wouldn't be allowed to strike? Do you feel as if he's going to be off the hook? And secondly, given that Kevin and Mary are going to be asking NEU members to accept this, do you see any way in which the NEU, which is of course a member-led union, as all unions are, do you see any way in which the NEU would actually reject this, given that obviously the proportion of NEU members on social media is actually very low?
Yeah, I mean that is the cautionary tale to my read. I may be in that echo chamber, and remember, I may be one of the more committed members, because I don't. Ideologically speaking, I think we could push for more. I think we had a once in a generational opportunity. This government is not strong. This government is far from strong. This government is vulnerable. And if you are a union and you are collectively, your power derives from the collective action. I've never known the union to have, in a generation since I've joined the union, such actual power. That hasn't followed through. So do I think there's a little bit of collective bottling it at the top? I have utmost respect. Before I criticize any Kevin and Mary or the guys on those round table, I don't know what they were negotiating, what they're up against. What I can say is I have nothing but the utmost respect for how the unions led us through COVID. So I am torn between my loyalty towards the union leadership, who I think are, have done a fantastic job thus far, have carried us thus far. But do I think they could have been a bit more aggressive? Do I think they could have been a bit more mid-lynch? Do I think they could have been a bit more, hold on, let's push now? Do I think brinkmanship comes into it? Honestly speaking, if it were me and I was in charge, I'd be saying to my members, I'm sorry, guys. 11 months ago, Kevin made a video, and that video said that we wouldn't accept a 5% pay rise, a 5% pay increase from the independent review body, which he then said was effectively a 6% pay cut, and that would be one of the worst pay cuts in living memory. This 6.5% is still also a pay cut, with inflation hovering around 9 to 10%. So effectively, this is not a pay rise. I get absolutely infuriated. Now, going back to the members, members are well informed. The thing about motivating people towards strike action is you're waking up the beast, aren't you? You're making people aware, you're getting people invested, getting people involved. Hence why people carried through with the strike, because once you started down that course of action, haven't you? You've made a commitment. And some of my colleagues said that to me, that they were determined once they'd started striking to see it through to the end, because this is the course of action that they decided on. And the hardest part was the initial sort of first strike. And the numbers of people in my school who actually were going on strike was increasing. The number of people in my union was increasing. People came over to my union specifically with the purpose of striking because they were tired of the lies, the gaslighting, the lack of budget. It wasn't just the pay and conditions, it's all the other things of which we always are talking about on this fantastic radio station, Teachers Talk Radio. So honestly speaking, I think there is going to be a fight back within members, groundswell of members, who are going to look at this, the cold light of day, and say, this cannot come out of budgets. This can't come out of budgets. There was something else today I didn't really, and I actually, after something I thought to myself was almost insulting towards, I think, more leftward leaning, say, union members and us as a teaching profession. The fact that Rishi Sunak was trying to score some political points by saying he would fund this, and this has really got my goat up. This one, they would fund this by increasing visa charges for migrants.
Well, it was a mistake, wasn't it? That isn't actually true, and that was funding some of the other pay rises. And I think, it was interesting, of course, that Rishi Sunak misspoke on that, but it's also interesting about the thinking of other public sector pay rises being funded from that as well.
The thing is, did he bespoke it, or was that almost a kind of play into the gallery of trying to be this version of Thatcher? I don't judge our government to be strong in any way, shape, or form. I don't think they are. From everything I've seen of them, I think they're putting the hammer down, ideologically speaking, on the public sector. And I think that's what's really hurting people, is that we've had this during austerity. Those of us who have stuck around in the profession long enough have known. We've seen this pattern before. We're all in it together. George Osborne told us, "Let's do one for the team." They told us. We were told the same thing during COVID. We're sick and tired, and a lot of the longer timers like myself, who have been in this, invested so much of our life into the teaching profession. What we're fighting for is, I'm fighting for the future of the profession. I'm fighting for the future of the children. And to have any of our pay rise taken out of budgets, it's a red line. And that's where I think there is a definite, where the membership and the leadership are going to be very much at odds with each other, because no disrespect to the leadership, they ain't sitting in the front line on the coalface dealing with the day-to-day issues that we deal with. And I think, again, that's going to not go down very well with many within the union if that line is crossed of it has to be 100% fully funded. That's what we were always told. That was a red line. If that is not the case, then that, for me and for many in the union, and I will see what the voting rates comes out like, and that's the case I'll be saying to people, I'd be asking my members to reject this if it turns out even a penny of this comes out of school budgets. We don't need anything coming out of school budgets. In fact, we need money going into school budgets.
More than half of it's coming out of school budgets.
Well, that's a deal breaker, and it always was a deal breaker. And I don't know how. I really don't. I'd be interested from next Monday how Kevin and Mary how they're going to get around that. I'm interested to know how they're going to get around that, because they're about to do something, and I mentioned Munich for this. They're about to do something in trusting this government. I think they're holding a piece of paper outside, the airport saying "Peace in our time." I really do think if they think they're going to trust, I do not trust that piece of paper that deal is written on, because what we've seen so many times before is they give with one hand, take with the other, and when you read, there is no new money. So where's the money coming from? That's the key thing. You follow the money, don't you? Where is the money for the teachers' pay rise coming from? And that's when you start looking into, is that redundancies? Where's the support staff in this? We are hemorrhaging support staff. We're hemorrhaging TAs. So there's no mention of anything to do with support staff at all. And I think that's a massive mistake again. I have increased the number of support staff in my union exponentially year on year. Mainly because support staff now are dealing with children with parents who are more likely to complain, and I've had more support staff come to me and say, look, I need to be in a union for my own protection, and I've never had so many join my union. But also when I look at their pay is chronic. I had a colleague of mine said recently that they're an experienced teaching assistant of nearly 20 odd years, and their own son earns more on a part-time shelf-stacking job than they do. That is an absolute disgrace. And there's no mention whatsoever of support staff. So I think that's a massive mistake, because the union is not just a teaching union. It is an education union. And it is those of across the whole of education that we're fighting for that pay deal. And I've told a lot of my support staff that as a more, I'm gonna say wealthier, but as a better off individual who's earning more money than my support staff, their wages and their cost of living crisis it's unbelievable when you see how low the support staff wages are. And some of those teaching assistants, many of them have degrees. Many of the teaching assistants I've come across in my career, there's many I've actually said, you should be a teacher. Why aren't you a teacher? And they want to be in the role of a teaching assistant, but it is so undervalued. And for no mention of that today, I think it's a massive, massive mistake, because they have also been, balloted as well. They are also involved. The other thing I think is a reason why this is not going to go down well is Scotland and, of course, Wales. When you compare the pay deals in Scotland and Wales to the pay deal in England, it levies a lot of questions of what's uniquely different with Scotland and Wales. Why are teachers in England not given the same respect? And that's really where I'm at with this. I don't think the government are again showing me and my profession the respect that it deserves. And I extend that to my colleagues in other unions. And I suppose one of the ironic twists in this is that the police union, of course, which can't go on strike, is getting 7%, whereas teachers who have been on strike get 6.5%. And I never would like to play a sector off sector, because I think police, any public sector worker, my wife works in the NHS, we all know we've all been through pay stagnation for the last 13 years. Depending on who you are, to a certain degree, it all depends how much you've suffered. So it's the degrees of suffering, really, isn't it, when you look at anybody who's been in the public sector for the last generation. And certainly that's what today is about, is like, look, we're giving the public sector a pay rise. I think that's a headline. So it'd be interesting to see what the other unions and what also the other sections of the public sector are going to do with that. My instinct tells me that the doctors aren't going to accept it. I think they are more united. I've never known doctors go on strike.
BMA has rejected it, hasn't it?
Yeah, and there is again, so the BMA have rejected that, whereas the teaching unions are in a conciliatory, acceptant mode, which, again, that is the key question I'd like to ask, is why have they agreed to this? Why have they lowered their initial demand, which was, the initial demand was for inflation? So that should be about 10%. The other key question I was asked by some of my colleagues today, and this is something they're going to have to address, is this is for next year. So what about, retrospectively speaking, the year gone by when inflation was at 12% and we were getting 4.5%? And of course, some of my colleagues have come to me recently saying, my mortgage is going up, and we're seeing a tax on our living standards. And then, and this is the kicker, when you start looking at school budgets, we know school budgets are so tight. A lot of trusts are in debt. What does that mean when you start to say where does the money come out of in a sector which has been cut to the bone? And I saw that the other day from the Chancellor saying there is no money, there is no extra money for the public sector. They're just going to have to make savings. I thought, what savings? Where do you think there is savings? Where do you think there is money within the education sector? Where do you think you can make some efficiency savings? Because I don't see where there is, especially when you see how close to the bone we've been running for now on 12, 13 years. And then when you add in many schools, I asked one of my colleagues today, who's a safeguarding officer who does a lot of the outreach, what program are we doing over the summer for the children on the free school meals? And it was the sort of, well, we're going to have to go with the county council. We're going to work with the county council. We've identified the children, because that's the thing now. We became aware of the precarious family situations of many of our children during COVID. And when I were aware of them, what do? We know we have huge amounts of poverty. We have got huge amounts of deprivation. And schools are one of the few institutions that, of course, help people altruistically. And school budgets have been something where schools have altruistically helped out people in their community. And that's even more need to do that. Energy bills have gone up. Resources bills have gone up. I really do think I'm almost talking myself into a slight depression here. I'm bitterly disappointed.
Well, I'll tell you what, Brent, I'm going to stop you talking there for now, because it's time for me to tell you that Pearson Edexcel's new student-centred French, German, Spanish 2024 GCSEs cater to the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability, or reason for studying. They're rooted in learned language knowledge. Their assessments are transparent and accessible, allowing all students to showcase their language skills through inclusive and relatable content. The new Pearson MFL GCSEs build a shared cultural capital that helps students develop an understanding of and appreciation for the wider world. You want to find out more, so go to go.pearson.com/MFL. This show is also brought to you in partnership with the Happy Confident Company. The Happy Confident Company provides clinically approved, ready-to-go well-being and mental health programs to help your pupils thrive in just 10 minutes a day. You want to find out more, go to www.happyconfident.com. We've got quite a lot of listeners in here this evening, Brent. We've got NEU members, we've got other union members, we've got people who might have questions about this payoff news today. We might have people who are concerned. We might have people who haven't made up their minds as to what they think of it yet. We have had some comments from people throughout the day, which you can see pinned to the top of your screens. If we start with Mr. Copping. Mr. Copping said, on the verge of getting massive collaborative action between the unions, the leadership of the unions have failed in their duty, will still be effectively taking a pay cut, and it's not even fully funded. That is a point you were making earlier, Brent. Gobbo Deep Lover says this is all well and good, but it's only a pay rise for teachers. When you factor in the support staff pay increase, head teachers will have to find another 3.5%. Good luck with that. Again, a point you were making as well, Brent. We also have, let's have a look. We also have Mr. Barnes. Mr. Barnes says, I'm an AEU member, more than happy to accept 6.5 with funding for the extra 3%. Better than the 0 or 1 we'd have been offered without taking action, and much better than the 4.5 with 1K one-off we were offered months ago. Mr. B replied and said, so which members of staff are you happy to lose at school? Schools don't have the 3.5% available to fund in the budget. SLT, I don't know who that is, says, colleagues I've spoken to from the NEU are prepared to accept. You have to realise that it is a victory for the NEU. The original offer is 3.5%. Alex Richardson, who's listening, has said, no, we wanted at least an inflation level pay rise and for it to be funded. This is a cut. As far as I can see, about half of it is funded and half isn't. Kevin Courtney, am I wrong? Is the whole 6.5% rise completely covered by new government money? And we've got some other ones as well, which we'll refer to later on today. Reminder to everybody listening live, a very good evening. You can take part in the discussion. You should hopefully see in the bottom right hand corner of your screens a little speech bubble with the number 6 next to it at the moment, which is the number of people who have tweeted along so far. The number of tweets we have received, you can make that 6 turn to a 7, 8, 9, 10, etc. By sharing your thoughts in the bottom right hand corner of your screen. Do you agree with this pay deal? What would you like to know more about? Are you an NEU member who's been out on strike and feels as if it was all for nothing, or do you feel relieved that the government has accepted the STRB? Let us know. And if you're brave, then in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, there is a request button, a request to speak. I know that some people in this space have spoken in previous Education Tonights and in previous Teachers Talk Radio Twitter spaces. So be 10% braver, press that button in the bottom left-hand corner, come in as a speaker and tell Brent and myself what you think about the pay offer announced today.
I think that's those comments. They are literally mirroring, aren't they? Exactly. I think that's going to be the mirror image up and down the staff room, up and down the country. Do we stick or do we twist? Do we continue on the course of action? And I said to a colleague earlier on, it's like we're playing the game of 21 and we're currently sitting on a 15 or a 16. Do we try and twist for a 21, or do we hold on to what we have? And that's how I feel. It is true. We have won more than we would have probably won if we hadn't have done anything. And I think what we have won is a more unionized union that has demonstrated its ability to stand up for itself, which I am deeply proud of my profession.
But the question is, Brent, yes,
what effect has it had?
Obviously, the last few months, the NEU has gained tens of thousands of new members. It's galvanised this sort of sense of solidarity across and between schools and across and between teachers. And it's made union members in the NEU actually feel a bit of hope that there is a better future and a better funded future. My question then is, are particularly new members and younger teachers who are, or less experienced teachers who've been in the NEU for less than you have, let's say, are they going to look at the fact that they're getting a below inflation pay offer, half of which is going to come from existing school budgets, and think, well, what's the point of all of that? And then the union is going to lose that sense of galvanisation it's built over the last few months. Because for many,
Yeah,
it's for many,
it's a fair point.
it's going
Yeah,
to feel
it's a
like a
fair
bit of a
point.
waste of time, and it's going to make them want to step away from being unionised, or at least being an active member of our union, because it feels as if it was all for nothing.
Well, it's that Pyrrhic victory, isn't it? It's the obviously Kevin and Mary will say, you know, we've done a good job. We've got the government to negotiate. It's made a difference. I think the devil is in the detail. I said that the last time I spoke, is that so much I knew 6.5% might be on the table, but my take was always, if 6.5% was fully funded, if it was Ofsted reform, if it was looking at, you know, the situation that we have in schools with overcrowding in the buildings, if there was a definite realization that this government was going to do like a Blur in 1997 and say, look, education, sorry, you've been so chronically forgotten about. You guys have done a great job during COVID. You know what? You do a great job for society, and you're right. You've done a lot for us. Although we can't reward you at the moment with some finances, but what we can do is, here, what would make your life a lot easier. Let's sit down with you and discuss these things. We haven't had any of that, and that's really where I think the union's missing its opportunity to press home its advantage. It feels like you've got the troops mobilised. It feels like you're ready to go to war, and then you're told to stand down, and you're going, but we haven't really done anything. So it's there's a sense of disappointment that I feel we're on the brink. We're on the brink of bringing together the education profession to make a stand, to make, you know, a big stand, a big statement for all those niggles that we've had for a long time. And your read is correct. If they're not careful, that momentum and that motivation and that fight will then go into cynicism of like, well, what's the point? Because union reps like me have had to work really hard on the ground to convince people this is worthwhile striking. It is worthwhile following this through. We are making progress. Join us. It's worth something. So this is a better for me personally, who has put a lot of my own personal time and invested a lot of my own capital into trying to see this over the line. And those conversations that you've had up and down the staff room. Even today, I was walking around with pieces of paper. I'd photocopied 4 or 5 news stories to try and piece together what was happening. So on the sports pitches today, you know, somebody's throwing the javelin, I'm handing them over, you know, what the BBC had said, here, what do you think? Have a look at that. Come back, talk to me later. Because I want the best for my colleagues. I want the best for my profession. I want the best for the kids I teach. And I think what we did was magnificent in the last couple of months. I was very proud, and hope is the correct word. I think you're absolutely right, Tom. There was a definite hope that we could make a difference. We could really push home, get the message across, and fight for education. And we had to say it was pay, and we had to say, you know, it was pay because that's what the union laws were saying. But we were always conscious in the media to go, it's not just about pay. I was talking to LBC at 1 o'clock in the morning, defending my profession on Richard Spur's show, and he was like, oh, children are being suffered because these teachers are going on strike. And I wasn't having it one bit. He says, I'm going on strike for the kids. But you get a bit fatigued and tired when you think, oh gosh, here we go again. Why am I doing this? And I checked my pension out yesterday. I've done something I've never done in my 19 years. I checked my pension out, because even I, who love this profession with all my heart, I'm starting to say to myself, seriously, can I keep doing this? And I don't know whether this is just what's coming, whether we're expendable, or whether this is what the government want. They don't want long timers. So on the thing I have to say is, I think a lot of younger professionals coming into the teaching profession probably would say, I take the 6.5%, because maybe they aren't going to wait around or stay around for 10, 15 years. They don't see it as a long-term profession. Maybe this is the thing now. Maybe I'm a dying breed staying 20 years, because everything always seems to indicate, let's get teachers into the profession. And the last point I'll say with that, and I don't know if listeners would calculate this, but I did something the other day. I put it up on Twitter and I calculated. When I started teaching in 2003, my starting salary was £18,000. I then put into the inflation calculator what my starting salary would be now, the equivalent, double it. It's £36,000. The government's talking about recruiting more teachers by raising it to £30,000. That would still be £6,000 short. When I entered the teaching profession, I know some of you who are younger are going to hate me right now when they say this. I went in with £12,000 with a debt with my 5 years at university, 4-year degree, 1 year PGCE, £12,500 was my student loans. I got a free grant to go to university. If you were now to come and follow me now and do the same thing, you're talking 60 to 70 grand of debt to go into a job that's already paying you 6 grand less. That's the reality of why we have a recruitment. And then I calculated my pay currently on my whatever, on my top of the teacher scale, plus my UPS, plus my TLR for being ahead of history. And I calculated what my colleague, who was my mentor when I entered the teaching profession in 2003, was all, because that's where he was at. He was the head of history, he was M and UPSs. And I would be on over £72,000 now. And I am nowhere near that. That would be the equivalent. I then thought about my auntie. My auntie was a teacher for 24 years, retired at the age that I am now, and was able to live on that pension after doing 24 years as a teacher. That's the reality, and that's why I don't think, in good conscience, I can support this pay deal, because for me it's a sticking plaster over the gaping wound, which is a managed decline of our profession, a slow death by 1,000 cuts. And I think we've been taken advantage of for far too long, because we're intrinsically motivated towards helping children. And I think many of us who've survived long enough in education know that we're, I'm not saying we're mugs, we're not, we're good people, but we do it because we care. And I think that good people, because we care, has been taken advantage of. So yes, I do feel a lot of sympathy towards the younger professionals coming into the profession, because I think they're being shortchanged. I think they've been shortchanged in going through university, being charged the amount of money they are for their degrees, for the quality of what they're being offered at that level of education, and the debt that they're carrying with them, and the house prices. Imagine being a young professional now coming out with that amount of debt, those low wages, and then trying to buy a house for the first time. Oh my word, no wonder we're struggling to recruit for what is a profession which is highly qualified, highly specialised. And that's the reality of it. It's all very well saying, you know, we got 6.5%, we fought for it. It's just nowhere near enough. And that's not being greedy. We should be getting 16 to 70% in restitution. And the junior doctors had a point when they actually said, let's go and talk about getting 25 to 30% when they started their pay dispute, because that's pay restoration. And it may sound like, wow, you're asking for that amount of money, but that's the amount of money they should be on. But when you see
So
that Western Australia is recruiting,
when we spoke to
yeah,
Edward Heberty a few months ago, now back in March, about pay restoration, he said it was unrealistic, and in fact, neither he nor Neve Sweeney directly committed as any general secretaries to recommending something which would be above inflation. In fact, neither of them were prepared to say that they'd only accept or only recommend members accept something above inflation. So I think that's interesting. You know how, yeah, obviously it's a negotiation and you've got to start somewhere and you've got to meet in the middle. But it does feel as if NEU members are being a little bit shortchanged on this, and they'll probably look at NASWOT members. They'll probably look at other, non-union non-members, and they'll think, well, you're going to get the same pay rise as us, but you didn't do anything. And I know it's, that's divide and rule and things like that as well. But it feels as if, I'm sure that NASWOT are going to come out and say, look, we balloted for strike action, fine. And now look, the government
yeah,
offered 6.5%, and then you members are going to turn around and say, well, yeah, you had nothing to do with it, really. Tom Rogers said something interesting, and I've got some thoughts on this. He said, is it better to accept this better offer as it is now and starting funneling all spare energy into pushing for policy changes that might reduce teacher workload and affect recruitment/retention, e.g. Ofsted flexible working PPA? My response to this is, while the unions are in dispute with the government over pay, that's the opportunity to put those issues on the table. As soon as the pay issue is taken off the table, all of those other issues go off the table as well. And it is a negotiation between two sides, and those are bargaining. Those are basically, in this case, they are bargaining chips that could and should and probably, and ought to have been used in order to actually to change recruitment and retention. I don't think, and Brent, feel free to disagree, I don't think that 6.5% will have any impact on recruitment and retention. The NFER, which is your big educational research body, said that 16.5% is what would have been required in order to help stem the retention crisis. So my view on Tom's question about is it better to accept the pay offer and then put all of your spare energy into going for the workload savers and the retention enhancers is those are things that needed to be kept on. Those are only on the table because of a pay dispute and because of what teachers can and can't strike about. We have had a comment in from a deep lover again, who said school staff are being treated like the old pub landlords were. Get the expensive, experienced ones out in favour of the young, cheap ones. It didn't end well.
I agree, absolutely. I'd go so even further and maybe, I mean, my political instincts take over because I do have Machiavelli. I did read it when I was like 7. I wasn't a normal child to me, and if you wanted to divide and conquer the teaching profession, this is what you do. This is get us to fight among ourselves, get us to sort of tear ourselves apart, much like you're seeing, that you see what happens with the Game of Thrones, which is the opposition party. You get that, and I think that's the sad thing about today is I just felt that we were on the cusp of being united. I was looking forward to standing on the picket line. It sounds weird to say it. I was looking forward to finally standing in the picket line with my head teacher. I absolutely think the world of the guy. He's been so supportive all the way through. I can't fault him one bit, and he's been absolutely completely with us all the way in anything in helping, because he knows. I've always said to him, I want your budget money back. I want your budget money back. You need your budget money. I was a school governor on 2 separate occasions, and I've seen how precarious finances are in schools. I know that our finances in our educational setting are precarious. That's leading to non-specialist teaching GCSEs. I've been a non-specialist teaching at GCSE, and I'm seeing the situation getting worse and worse. And I'm standing on that picket line basically for all of that. So I agree with your read more than Tom's, because you have to use the opportunity to push home your advantage. And your advantage was...
Interestingly, on that note, I visited a school earlier this week, which is facing a real big problem with history teaching and a lack of history teachers next year. Their history department next year is an ECT 1 and a sociology teacher who's teaching 10 hours a week of history. That's all they've got.
Yeah.
And that's for history. History recruits really well for ITT. And it's normally, as you know full well, Brent, it's normally your history teachers who end up teaching geography and RE. But actually what we're noticing now is actually there is a bit, the recruitment and retention crisis, which has traditionally hit physics, which has hit maths, which has hit computing, which has hit design technology, is now hitting English. Those of you who work in state secondary schools will notice that it's harder to get English teachers now than ever before because of the impact of the new GCSEs having that long-term impact on university and then ITT and then into teaching. And actually we're starting to see those subjects which we've traditionally seen as being quite secure in terms of recruitment, like history, they're starting to be affected now as well.
And your long-serving members of staff who intrinsically will do the school a favour. In other words, my head teacher will come to me and say, look, I need a favour, and I go, what do you need me to do? Because I care about my school. I care about it. I've invested 20 years of my life in my school. It's my community. And I've done a favour this year. I taught GCSE physics, mainly because the class I was teaching it to had some interesting characters when it came to behaviour, and it was felt that my sort of slantish style of behaviour management would be good for kind of whipping him into shape, which makes it sound like I'm the commander of the Dirty Dozen, sending him off into the to do a behind enemy lines action. But it felt like that. It was literally like, this is what I need to do. But that has a massive impact on me when I'm doing a subject outside my comfort zone. That's becoming the norm. That is becoming the norm in many, many schools. We don't have an art teacher at the moment. We can't recruit an art teacher, so we're asking an specialist at Key Stage 4 to teach art for the first time. This is not, it can't be healthy. And then you add into that, somebody comes in and makes a judgment about your teaching in a subject that isn't your specialism. And I'm both a geographer and a historian. I intrinsically love both those subjects, but I chose to teach both subjects. Pushing somebody into a subject that they might not choose to do is a good way to push them out of the teaching profession as well. So that's another thing that's not going to help retention, because one of the joys, when I surveyed my staff a couple of years ago and I was doing my master's degree, I wanted to know my questions about motivation, and I really loved finding out more about intrinsic and extrinsic motivational systems, trying to come up with a magic way of why some people are motivated and why some staff are motivated, why some kids are motivated and others not. And choice is a really important thing. You choose your subject, you choose to teach it because there is something about it, and the joy of teaching your subject, you get such a joy out of, and you can sometimes stomach some of the other things that you have to put up with because you get to deliver your subject, you get to plan and organize your curriculum. But when you don't have, that knowledge of a subject, or you don't have an instinct or an inkling towards it, it's just another one of those things that is harder for a person to keep them going when they don't enjoy what they're teaching. And then, of course, you add into the fact they're going to be poorer, they're going to have to work longer hours, of course, to plan for a subject that they just don't have the same sort of, background in. So that's another massive issue that I think exponentially causes another problem on top of a problem, because we're not seeing solutions here. If the government's thinking the 6.5% solves a problem for them, I don't think it solves a problem. It creates another set of problems when it comes to budgeting, it comes to class sizes, it comes to recruitment, retention.
Mm-hmm.
So this doesn't solve anything. This actually, for me, if anything, in some schools is going to accentuate and accelerate the issues we're seeing, and therefore is not a solution that I can justify and say, this is not the magic wand we meet. And it's not just about the money. You could put a lot of budget money in some schools, structurally speaking. It's not money they need sometimes. It's other things they might need. But money can help. It does help when you can recruit the right people. It does help when you can hold on to them because you can pay them. It does help when you're trying to recruit and retain a member of staff and you're saying, some colleagues of mine are saying they're sick and tired of teaching in facilities. I mean, we did sports day on a sports pitch today that was, just to be honest with you, it's atrocious. It's absolutely atrocious. And that's not running down my school. I love my school, but we are in dire need of the Olympic legacy, any chance. And we're due for a new build in a couple of years' time, and we're really hoping that this new build is going to be like our white horse that's going to save our school. But, we're in a 60s build that has asbestos riddled around the place, and it's really, really sad. In the sixth wealthiest country in the world, you think this is what we are fighting for. We're fighting for education. And it goes back to that, my point I want to make. This was the opportunity for me. This was this is our Waterloo. This was that time where for 13 years, we put up with so many things, not just the pay and conditions, the slow managed decline of the profession, of education standards, of our children. This was the stand that I think we should have followed through and pushed home and really, really went for it. We know how angry we were after what happened with Ofsted. This was that opportunity to unite all that together, because as both historians, you and I, Tom, we know that it only works. The more people involved in stopping something or standing up to authority, the more effective it usually is, isn't it? And you made that point a couple of months ago, and I think your read of that was correct. And you said the NEU could never do this alone. It would only succeed if it got the other unions joining it.
I'm
boom.
saying that indeed. I should point out that we do have some new listeners here, so a very good evening to all of our new listeners. For those of you who want to along, we have the bottom right hand corner, the little speech bubble. You can tweet us your thoughts on the pay offer and on this education news. If you want to be even braver, you can press that bottom left hand corner and request to speak. It's a good time for me to tell you that this show is brought to you in association with Pearson EdXL. Their new student-centred French, German and Spanish 2024 GCSEs cater to the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability or reason for studying. Rooted in learned language knowledge, their assessments are transparent and accessible, allowing all students to showcase their language skills through inclusive and relatable content. The new Pearson MFL GCSEs build a shared cultural capital that helps students develop an understanding of and appreciation for the wider world. Find out more at go.pearson.com. MFL. This show is also brought to you in partnership with the Happy Confident Company, who provide clinically approved, ready-to-go wellbeing and mental health programs to help your pupils thrive in only 10 minutes a day. Visit www.happyconfident.com to find out more. And a big shout out to Pearson MFL and to the Happy Confident Company, because we couldn't be here hosting and doing our thing and talking about the latest education news and the wider educational landscape without the support of Pearson MFL and the Happy Confident Company. So big thank you and a big shout out to them. We do have some new listeners. We do have Simon Kidwell from the NAHT. I don't want to scare him away, but Simon, if you do want to call in and let us know your thoughts on the pay offer, please do. We've got Martin Francis as well, who's been in here from the start, so very good evening to you. We have got Paul Foss, who's always been in here and is a loyal listener to Teachers Talk Radio, so good evening to you as well. Yeah, we've got all sorts of listeners, and very good evening to the first time listeners as well. We've got Alex Richardson, who I know will have thoughts on the payoff, and again, Alex, you're more than welcome to call in and share those. We have got Louise Terry, and who's been waving at us, so very good evening. We've got David Gash, we've got Rosie B, who's an English teacher. We've got MJC, who's a maths teacher. Julie Bell, who's a primary assistant head, would love to know about this from the SLT perspective. We have got Ben Northedge, we have got Elbow Deep Lover, who has been tweeting along this evening, so a very good evening to you, and thank you for your support as well. We've got Mr. Hall PE, and everybody else as well who has been listening and taking part in the Twitter space tonight. Back to you, Brent.
Yeah, I'd be really, really interested to hear what people think, actually, because I'm not saying I fully formed my opinion. I am going to say that because, I'm a child of civil rights activist. I'm a politically active green guy. I don't believe in compromising when it comes to certain principles. So I would say this is what I'm saying. I mean, I'm well aware of my own position. I'm more to the left. I'm more to the left within the union, and certainly I'm conscious that I have issues with this government, and maybe my own sort of, not saying prejudice, but maybe my own politics is bleeding into this, because obviously there are structural issues in society, and one of the reasons I am in the union is because I do believe in, education, but also the power of collective action and democracy and rights, and I bring it all together. And I think, I was really, really happy and proud to see action being taken, because look, teachers are a bit of a moany bunch. We are a little bit of a moany bunch. You have to be a teacher to know that we do like a good moan. But what was really good about the last couple of months was actually seeing people taking action, and seeing people I'd never thought actually would take action. And I had some really, brilliant moments when one of my support staff came to me and said, I know I don't have to be on strike. I'm going to go on strike. And I was like, it's okay, you don't need to. No, I want to. And they told me about they were a miner's wife, and how they'd been on strike for a year back in the 1980s, and that she just physically could not cross the picket line. So she marched down to my head teacher and basically says, I'm not crossing that picket line. What's the sanction? What would happen to me if I go on strike today? Phone call was made. You just lose a day's pay. And that was somebody I've worked with for 20 years, didn't even know that about them, and it saw something there that I never even was aware, and they were adamant, I am not crossing that picket line. I respect the picket line, and fair play if you're going out and strike, and I'm going out and strike with you. And I'll be honest, I nearly cried when that happened, because I thought, that's it. That's what we want people to make a stand. We want people to stand up for their rights. We want people to fight for education. It's fight or flight. I'm a big fan of psychology. We have two choices now. We fight or we fly. If we fight, I think we have more of a chance of succeeding in what we set out to do. If we don't, then I don't know what happens next. I really don't. I think, the government will then claim some sort of victory if it's faced down the unions, and, Rishi Sunak's going to claim he's the next incarnated Margaret Thatcher because he broke up the unions. I do worry of how this narrative is going to play, but public opinion is important. So I'll offer that out to everybody else, how they actually feel. Do they feel this is a victory? Do they feel this is a defeat? Do they feel this is a compromise? So how do people feel? Is it a victory?
I said
How do,
earlier that they'll be sipping champagne at the DFE headquarters today, in terms of forcing the unions to accept an offer below inflation, given what the NEU has been campaigning for, and that for the DFE being able to give an offer well within their means, and delaying this is a triumph, and Gillian Keegan will be celebrating this evening by forcing the unions to accept an offer much lower than what many of their members were campaigning for. Paul Foster has tweeted us a couple of questions. We may as well discuss these. The first one is, why haven't all of the teachers, head teachers and support staff all had strikes at once? I never thought we would get an acceptable, fully funded offer of HT on board. I assume you asking there, Paul. Feel free to clarify why not everybody has been on strike at once, and that's because the NEU was the only union to meet the threshold, I'm sure, unless you mean something different. And then the second question, is a pay offer just for teachers? What about support staff and head teachers? Thanks. The pay offer is for anybody on main scale, upper pay scale, or the leadership scale, so it's not for support staff, but it will include head teachers as well.
Yeah, that's correct with the strike ballot. Again, the legislation designates that the union has to achieve a 50% turnout, but of the 50% turnout, it must then get 80% of the 50% turnout. So effectively, you need 40% of the union to vote for strike action. I think that's how it works out.
This is a problem that NASWORT then had with their second ballot, which
correct.
NASWORT were probably expecting a similar turnout to before, when they didn't manage to get 50%. I can't remember exactly what it was. I think it was 41 or 42%. You might know,
I think 46, I think it was. It was 46%, yeah.
But a lot of people are predicting it might be less than that, because we know that some of their members had left to join the NEU. And so this disaggregated ballot, where even if they didn't quite make it to 50%, there would be hundreds of schools which did make it beyond 50%, and they would be able to go out and strike. They've sort of shot themselves in the foot, because they managed to get 52, which I certainly wasn't predicting, and I know that many education people weren't expecting beyond 50%, and I think some people in NASWOT weren't expecting that either. And so they've shot themselves in the foot by getting the national figure they wanted for national strike action, but with disaggregated ballot, meaning that not all schools could then go out on strike, which I know that senior people in NASWOT would have been very disappointed that they sort of misread that one, but nobody's blaming them, because they weren't expected to get beyond 50%.
That's true, because of course you would, and I think we both would agree at that time that it's going to be harder for them, because the members more likely to strike had already shifted over to the NEU. But there was also worth noting a little bit of a shift the other way as well. I mean, I had a couple of my members in the NEU saying, look, I joined the ATL all those years ago, and they're a non-striking union. And the ATL was then merged into the NUT to become the NEU. So there were two members in my school who felt, I joined a non-striking union. I didn't really want to join the NEU. I just carried over into the from the ATL to the NEU. I'm going to go join the NASUWT. So there was a little bit of movement the other way, but the movement was more, especially towards the NEU, from disgruntled NASUWT members. So yes, them getting 52%, but that's my point, is that just at the point where we got the NAS with us, and I was sitting there last night with a big smile on my face going, wow, brilliant, that's it. We've got the NAS and the NEU. I've got every union member in my school now with me. Not just, my members, but all, and even to the point where my NASUWT, union rep was at the point where they were like, if we're not voting yes for this, I have to seriously consider me moving over. So there was a definite feeling that the NASUWT members, many of them were, I think, angry that they didn't get the threshold last time. And yourself, we both deal in causality, don't we? And I feel that there was a backlash, and that was gut backlash. Obviously, then came through the fact they got it over the line this time, unexpectedly, correct. But doesn't that show you? That showed you that even with a kind of a lesser number of NASUWT members who are less likely to go on strike, that they voted for. I know for a fact that they already, even before the end of the NEU ballot, that they were already over the 50%. That was a given. The push within the NEU, ironically, was to get more than last time to show the strength of feeling, to ironically help the negotiation, because that's where we started with this. We were told the first ballot, get everybody to vote as much as possible to show the strength of feeling, and that was true. We got over the line of 54%, plus then there's 90 odd percent of people voted, and I felt so disappointed the support staff didn't get the 50% last time. But my feeling was that the support staff ballot, which is just about to close in 2 weeks' time for, I think, NEU, they would get that over the line. And again, you'd have support staff, NASUWT, NEU, and the head teachers' unions all planning for the third week of September. I was even being told that we booking the date. I was close to booking a hotel. This is how close we are. I was close to booking a hotel in Manchester for the Conservative Party conference, to be outside this Conservative Party conference with my placard saying pay up, because that's where we were heading, and that's where we were being told to prepare to be outside the Conservative Party conference to push home together with all the other unions. So we're at the stage now where it's been negotiated. It's 6.5%. It's not completely fully funded, and it's slightly better than the first offer, and it's not backdated. And we're still asking questions about where the funding comes from. So
yeah. Holly says my wife is a Holly says my wife is a teacher, and she will vote to accept the offer. It is not perfect, but a compromise was always going to be the end point. With our mortgage up for renegotiation, we cannot afford to say no to this. Ricky has said that's what the government are banking on. I respect this decision, as every circumstance is different. This is going to make the situation worse, as schools still need to find 3.5% out of existing budgets. We've had a question from AJ, and I don't know the answer to this one, Brent, so I hope you can help. Is this pay offer in line with the initial pay offer, i.e. will it be backdated from April 23? This will cause significant problems for schools as the increased funding is replaced for 23-24. I don't know the answer to that one. Do you, Brent?
No, my initial thought is quite simply this is for the September going forward, that we've had our pay deal last year, which was for the 4.5%, wasn't it, we had last year? Or so that's my understanding. This is the pay going forward. So no, last year we would be then 8% down last year, technically, with the pay versus inflation. So we're already 8% down. And then next year, with inflation forecast to be about 9-10%, we would then be 3 to 4% down. So in the 2 years, my crude mathematics would put us at 12% down in 2 years.
Ben Northedge says, on the face to the public, it's a good deal, but scratch the surface, it's stretching our industry too far. The wider general public will never see the fact that we're funding this from an already threadbare budget. And similarly, another story which we could have spent time talking about this week, but it was gazumped. The reading threshold for Key Stage 2 SATs being dropped by 5 marks has made the national average look marginally lower than last year. Again, to the general public, they will accept the DFE's narrative that the reading paper wasn't difficult. I think it's one of those things that I found quite difficult when I've spoken to media outlets in the last couple of weeks about the strikes and about the pay dispute. Understanding actually the nature of school budgets and the nature of teacher pay, and how if it's not being funded by new money from DFE or the Treasury, it's coming from money which is going towards the students. And actually, because teachers do care about their students, they don't want to get a pay rise which is going to come from funding which could be going towards getting their students better education. It's very, very complicated. It's very difficult. We do, Brent, have some great news though. First of all, Boris Johnson has remembered his PIN for his phone, so he's sent his inquiry. And secondly, we've got 3 speakers.
Fantastic.
We have got Shaniqua, we have got Paul, and we have got Mr. Hall. Where do you want to start, Brent?
Oh, well, we'll go in alphabetical order.
S, P, M. Mr. Hall. Mr. Hall. We'll start with Mr. Hall PE then. It's been a long week, Shaniqua. Right, Mr. Hall, good evening. How are you, and what would you like to add? Once he's found his mute button like Brent earlier.
Oh, you...
Bottom left. Oh, we'll come back to Mr. Hall. We'll go to Shaniqua. Shaniqua, good evening, and tell us how you are and what your thoughts are on today's news.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, I hope you're all well. So I am not happy at all. And I've been part of some of the NEU's kind of strike groups recently, or groups talking about, like, if we were offered this 6.5, what would we do? And, getting ready. We've been doing a lot of talking about strikes next year and getting ready. And a lot of people have been ready to go, as Brent was talking about, to the Tory conference in Manchester, ready to strike, and actually it's quite shocking. The news this week, I'm actually, today, I'm really shocked about, but I'm really shocked at seeing how many people saying they would accept. I'm very much reject, and I'll be promoting vote to reject, because we're gonna get less than Scotland. That's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. And I've been striking. I've striked for 8 days, and this is not what I've been striking for. And I'm poor. A lot of people talk and say they don't have money. I also don't have money, but I don't want to be striking again in the future. In a couple of years over the same thing. So I am willing and ready. I will strike for as long as I need to. I'll be voting to reject. So that's just my piece I wanted to share.
So, Shaniqua, it sounds as if you think the parties involved in this are just kicking the can down the road. Short-term, you're saying it's a short-term solution to a much longer-term problem.
Exactly.
Well, do you feel let down?
I do. I think a lot of people today feel a bit let down, and actually there's some of us who are, like, I guess, really into the union and we're reading up and doing a lot of that. But for some people who won't read up as much, which is fine, they might think this is a good offer, but in the long run it's not really a good offer. And actually, if not now, later on, something's going to give. And already I'm losing amazing teaching assistants. Amazing, mate. I'm out here always entering twinkle competitions, like, oh, give me a glue stick. So I want to see changes happen in the long run. In the future, I might have a little child. I want my child to have a good little education. Right now, it might be me just teaching my child if this is how things are going, or I might be knocking on Gillian Keegan's door. Don't get me started about her. But it's not been great. It's not been great. Gillian Keegan, who doesn't even talk to us, who's today spoken about, oh, look what's happening now.
She's clearly been talking, hasn't she? All four unions, because they put out a joint statement, and they couldn't put out a joint statement. They weren't talking to each other.
It's not proper talking, because it's not acceptable. This offer is not, and there's a lot of people who are not agreeing. I think you guys have seen the NEU have this emergency meeting on Monday, but then there's also another emergency meeting about educators who are saying no to it. And at the moment, I'm part of, like, this Educators Say No WhatsApp group. There's like maybe 600 teachers in there talking about this is unacceptable. So a lot of people are not having this. We're not having it. Vote to reject, everyone. That's what I wanted to say. Sorry.
We did ask Daniel Kebede, and we did ask Kevin and Mary whether they were willing to come on tonight. Daniel was occupied, and I don't think we heard back from Kevin and Mary, which is a shame. Yeah. But we did put the invite out there. Thank you, Shaniqua.
No problem.
We may come back
Thank you.
in a minute. Can we go to Paul next? He was clapping along to Shaniqua there. Paul, right. Good evening. And what are your thoughts on the news today?
Well, first of all, the reason I listen so often and join in is basically to learn what's going on, because there's some things, even though I'm outraged, I don't always understand, certainly the ins and outs. So I actually found out about this in the staff room at lunchtime today, and the teacher who told us had a massive smile on her face. I think she just was happy that she wasn't going to have to strike anymore. But I'm kind of in the same ilk as Shaniqua, because first of all, I don't know, and you probably would know this, is what is the percentage that would make it up to the current rate of inflation?
Well, inflation is ever changing.
It is.
It's been in double figures in the last year from April. and it is slowing down. And as those of us know who follow politics, Rishi Sunak has promised that he will halve inflation. It's very interesting talking particularly to students about what this actually means. It does still mean that prices are going to go up. It's just by half as much as they were before.
Yeah, because I wouldn't, because the argument that a few people
6.5 below inflation.
Yeah, because obviously quite a few people have sort of read comments and things like that, and people are sort of saying, well, actually, this offer is still under the rate of inflation, and I'm sort of thinking, well, how much would we want it to be? One of the biggest things for me, 6.5 or not, is schools having the funding to have it, like you said, like Brent was saying before, and our head teacher is very outgoing and very honest and open with all the staff. As soon as strikes are mentioned or extra funding and things like that, she does go very quiet and leaves the room. And really, I just think that the schools, particularly like ours, that are very small, who've already lost a lot of staff over the last 2 years, would really struggle if it wasn't fully funded.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, that's, for me, is always the red line. I don't want to be scrimping and saving for fully funded. I want more money to go into schools. And I remember Tom a couple of months ago he posed the question, and it's still a live question. If we were to forgo a pay rise and the money was going directly into schools, and they started sorting out some of the issues within schools, would I take a pay cut to have a better working environment, to have the children fully fed, to have better resources? Honestly speaking, I probably would. I would, because I have been. Because that's exactly what I've been doing for the last 13 years. I've been taking a pay cut to stay in a job because I care about the people in the community and my colleagues and the children. But that's not fair when you see bankers making bonuses again. That's not fair when you see the private sector. The Royal Mail got 10%. And I'm not belittling other jobs. I'm not having to go to other jobs. The private sector is making a bomb. Private sector wages are growing faster than they've ever grown. We're being outstripped. And that is just simply not fair. And the thing is, you can console yourself if you are working in an industry that was being well funded. If the money was going somewhere, you could see the money going. But in the context of the last couple of years, when you've seen the utter sheer waste and the nepotism and the corruption, that's what stings me, is this narrative of they've not got the money. They have the money. I know how economics works. It doesn't take that much to give us a pay rise, since they claw a huge percentage of that back in tax. This is ideological. This is a point being made. This is game theory. They've chosen sectors of the public sector to make an example of, and literally because they're not our type of people. It's as simple as that. That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, because I mean, that always grates on me is that whenever we have the usual narrative of, oh, why are you striking? Don't you care about the children? Well, you're the ones who are actually giving the money to the schools who are looking after children. Do you not care about the children? Do you not care about the teachers who are looking after the children? And that's an ongoing with lots of other jobs and professions, is they are still meant to care about people who are using public services. So why aren't those services being funded and the people working for those services being paid to actually have a living?
It is. It's taking advantage of our altruism. Yeah. It's taking advantage of our nature, and our strength is not our individuals, because individually, we work in a magnificent job that makes a difference to individual children. But our collective strength is in the sheer size of people of our profession. We're one of the largest professions in the country, which should mean we're one of the most powerful professions. So I've thought that the teaching profession is a sleeping giant. We have such actual power to make such a difference in this country. And I think we have not taken that opportunity. I think I think our members are, and now that our members are motivated, I just think it's such a wasted opportunity to actually achieve some of the things that we've wanted to achieve the last generation. And that is to put education as one of the top priorities of this country, to put our children as one of the top priorities in this country, to put what we're trying to achieve with our children, social mobility, to try, because how many of us work in education because we ourselves were disadvantaged people. I was a disadvantaged child. I got through education. I got through university because of education. It's a game changer, and that's why we're still in. I refuse to be squeezed out of education, because I'm going to say it, and I don't care what opinion offends anybody. And you may not go blank me out, Tom, but I believe, honestly speaking, that there is now a desire to uneducate or de-skill sections of our society, because I do believe they are purposely now doing this. You could not do this to an education system unless it's deliberate. And I have to say there's a parallel across the public sector. And what I think is the real game: privatization, destruction of professionalism, destruction of workers' rights. I think if we're not careful, within a generation, we'll be replaced by AI. We won't be our profession. And I think this is the thing that maybe Mick Lynch is correct about his read about one of the reasons why he is fighting tooth and nail, not just for a pay rise for his profession. He's fighting for the future of his profession. But then again, I am meant to be the Arthur Scargill of Teachers Talk Radio. Maybe it is. Maybe I am, because that's the thing. No, what I'm saying is Scargill was fighting for the future of the mining industry. He was fighting for and he said the mining industry was going to be destroyed. He was right. He was absolutely right. Maybe that's it. Within a generation, there won't be. This is the last hoo-ha of the teaching profession, the last opportunity. This is our Custer's last stand,
We've had some more comments in. Martin Francis says the government has said additional money will come from higher charges on migrant access to the NHS. Is this an attempt to discredit the NEU? You can imagine the headlines. How do we deal with that divide and rule tactic? We discussed that one earlier. David Makes Music says, I'm so cross and upset. I can't believe they recommended this mendacious offer. We just let 5 LSAs go for September. I've got no idea how we'll support our complex needs kids, let alone everyone else. And it's ever shrinking budgets, teacher recruitment and retention crisis. Joe Haslam says, I'm not sure the public perception of rejecting the offer will be positive. What do you all think? That's a good question. Paul, back to you.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going to drop out in a sec. I was just going to say the meme or whatever that comes up quite often is that people become a lawyer, or they become this or that and the other, and actually teachers create all of those people getting in those positions. And the thing is that we don't just create people for professions, we create people's foundations, if you like, going forward, being young people going into 20-year-olds and then so on and everything else. And that's why I'm with Sneaker in the fact that we should hold out. We should make people realise how important our profession is and the worth of it, because all the arguments that come back of young people and sort of people going into the 20s of struggling with mental health or not being able to do this or not being able to do that, we as a profession are able to give them the foundations to do that. So it's worth, I'd sort of leave you on this really, is that I think it's worth rejecting it, and I think it's worth making a stand. I think the way that the timing of this just before the summer break isn't, a coincidence by accident, surely. And I think if we can get enough people to realise how we're being manipulated to maybe accept this offer, hopefully we can hold on for what is right. That's it.
Yep. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, it you can take the groundswell of even the cross section of opinion tonight. It's going to be a debate, but Paul's read is correct. I mean, the debate will stop for the 6 weeks as we all recharge our batteries. So it is like almost for some schools the last week of term, and we're also in a situation where, of course, the NEU is still balloting. So what happens to that? What happens to that ballot? That ballot will be published, and that will give you a groundswell, but it'll have to be put to the members. So it'll be interesting over the next couple of weeks, the conversations that will be had. But it's going to be hard to get those conversations when people are in their holidays. The turnaround is going to have to be very quick on this in order to get the opinion. in order to get some this sorted one way or the other. So it's and also we've got the backdrop of course the outgoing NEU administration with the new going NEU administration, and again, you know, it's worth noting that Daniel's name is on that press release with the other unions plus Rishi Sunak and also Kevin and Mary. So I mean, I'd like that Daniel at some stage to comment whether he feels it because he's inheriting this as the new NEU president, and as a more leftward leaning NEU president, it's interesting to how Daniel will be able to justify it. I'd be willing to listen to what Daniel, Kevin, and Mary have to say on Monday night, but they're going to have to work really, really hard to keep the union together and to sell this. And maybe they know more than we don't know at the moment. Maybe there may be more details, but it doesn't, from the outside already so far, it doesn't look as if it's fully funded. So I don't care how you spin that. That's a red line, and I don't know how they're going to justify that.
Yeah, interesting. Peter Williams has said we need to do a better job of communicating what the problem is. Any pay rise which isn't fully funded is going to have a direct negative impact on students. The impact on the students should always be the main message. This is my point. That if the money's not coming from the government, then it's coming from the students, and it's coming towards the It's coming from the education for those students, and it's going into teachers' pockets. And yeah, teachers, of course, we want a pay rise. We want to be paid what we believe our profession is worth, which is certain. You know, if you're comparing to 2010 in real terms, we think we should be paid more. But that money should not be coming directly from the resources and the support and the education of the young people who we teach. It feels wrong. It is wrong from a teacher's perspective. And yeah, I think Peter is right. I think teachers, and it would have been nice if the unions had taken the leadership, but clearly they're not at this stage. But it'd be good. It's good for teachers to take the lead and explain why a pay offer which is not fully funded from government funds is detrimental to students, detrimental to schools, and detrimental to education.
And even in that, I suppose, in rejecting that, there is merit then in saying that starts the conversation. Because going back to Joe's point about the public perception of rejecting the offer, I would be happy to face down my parents and say, here's your choices. We accept that offer. You're going to have redundancies, you're going to have budget cuts, and your children are going to suffer. So we'll accept that offer. Is that okay? Is that what you want? And that's up to us to make that argument and say, look, this is the situation. But I think that opens up to greater public consciousness of what do you mean budget's good? Because that was the thing about when they said, oh, the schools have got the budget money. Of course they've got the budget money for these pay rises. We've given them X amount of money. That didn't go down very well because there was such an outcry within the teaching profession. Are you having a laugh? Schools don't have this budget money. And now the government got a little bit embarrassed about that. So there is merit in having that, again, having that conversation about this has to be fully funded. And I think that's one of the surprising things about this. That had to be the red line. That's the red line for me, is it has to be fully funded. And if anything, that's a minimum requirement that I would have. Not even, that's a minimum, because it's got to be that we need funding restitution as well, not just pay restitution for teachers, but schools need to reverse. Many schools are 20-25% down in their budgets for the last 7 or 8 years. The cost of living crisis is causing huge problems when it comes to energy, when it comes to food, when it comes to consumables, it comes to exercise books and laptops and all sorts of stuff. Schools are struggling to resource. Schools are struggling to recruit. Supply budgets are off the scale because, private companies are picking over the carcass of some schools because they know we're desperate for supply staff. So agencies are making an absolute fortune at the moment, absolute fortune, because they're plugging the gap. So and that's the scandal again that the union broke about how much money's been wasted on fees. So we have all that, and I think that's good that we as a profession are going to have to, if we reject this, that we're going to have to manage public perception, because Joe is right. The first reaction will be, if we as a profession reject this pay offer, will be that we will be attacked. You will get the usual teacher bingo card of lazy teachers, lovey-doveys, lefties, lefty lawyer teachers that will get the same thing for that. We'll get all of those stereotypes coming out, and we'll have to take that, but we'll have to respond with, actually, we're not taking the money from the children. The shame will this time be is that was the argument was made by the union leadership. It won't be the union leadership that they make in our argument if we reject it. It will be the teaching profession itself. Well, that will be an interesting narrative of the teaching profession have rejected this pay offer, not the union leadership. And that's going to be a very interesting, how do you then throw the whole profession under the bus for this? Or will they go for the percentage of people who voted against the deal and then pull us into the stereotype of these teachers and we need to get rid of these people out of our profession? You see where I'm going with that. There will be that public sort of consciousness, and there will be teaching bashing from the right-wing media, which is going to happen anyway if you reject this offer, and we will fall into a trap potentially that may be there, and that's what worries me as well, is that there could be a trap for us. We're kind of caught in a bit of a checkmate situation. If we reject the offer, then we're seen as these militant left-wing teachers, trying to destroy kids' education. If we accept the offer, then that's it. We've missed our opportunity to make real lasting change. So we're in a really difficult buying at the moment, and I don't think a lot of people at this time of the year have the brain space to process it, let's be honest. Again, here we are, nearly at 9 o'clock at night, nearly about to finish the show, and I put that humdinger in.
Yeah, I mean, my word, it's been a busy hour and a half, hasn't it? I'll be back to stage. Bless me. Discussing the pay offer, and clearly the conversations are going to continue. Brent, I assume you'll be at the NEU's online meeting on Monday.
Yeah, I will.
I'm sure you'll be able to feedback for us there. I'm sure Shaniqua will be there as well. She's already said she's going to the after party after that one as well. So yeah, this is going to drag on. It'll be interesting to see what the other unions say, and it'll be interesting to see how NEU members actually vote. Big shout out to Pearson MFL and the Happy Confident Company, who are bringing you this show as partners of Teachers Talk Radio. It's been absolutely fantastic to have them supporting our shows. And yeah, thank you, Brent, for your hosting and for your words of wisdom from the union perspective that you're able to bring to us, which is very important. Thank you to everybody who's listened, including from the start, but also the people who've dropped in and out, including towards the end. Thank you to you. It's been great to have you here listening. The weekly review is on Sunday, as ever, at 10 a.m. We've got some shows between now and then, but we'll be discussing the pay offer in more detail and the other stories as well, which have been in the education news in the last week. That is going to be hosted by Nathan Ginn. I'm sure you can see him in the space listening along, and we'll feature a range of special guests. Brent, are you going to be there this Sunday, do you know?
Oh, I have to check my calendar, which is called Wife, but I'm sure I will be. I'm sure I will be. Yeah, that's
Shaniqua, can we count on you this Sunday?
Oh, hi. Yeah, if I don't have a hangover, I'll be there.
Well, I'm sure you've got plenty more to say about this, Shaniqua. So we shall see, and we shall see. Hopefully, we'll see loads of you here Sunday at 10 a.m. For a weekly review.
One last thing before we go. One last thing.
Go on,
regardless of how everybody votes, we always have to respect the differences of opinion. That's the thing that's been the last couple of months has been brilliant. Is that people have gone on strike, other people haven't gone on strike. I'm really proud of the profession, and as much as I'm disappointed with today, I have nothing but the utmost respect for Kevin and Mary as well. And it's a difficult job. I just hope they have more up their sleeve to sell us, but either way, I think the best thing we can all do is support each other in the way that we got through the last couple of years. And I think it would sadden me, and it would sadden me if this is going to cause a bit of a wedge and we get divided. So I respect the vote either way. I'm sure everybody will, but we can have the discussion like I suppose like adults. I just worry. I get a sense today there's a little bit of people are a bit raw and a bit angry, and I can see in the forums there's going to be a little bit of back and forth. And as long as people keep it the fact that we all care, we're all in the profession because we care, that would be my last sort of thought on this, just to make sure that we're all in it because we care. And it's a really difficult job that we do, and if people are saying let's take the offer, they may be in a situation where they've got no other choice. And it's the same with striking. I've always had a policy of that, of not judging people if they say they can't afford to go on strike. I get that, and again, it's been quite amazing. You said it's about hope. The last couple of months, I've been so hopeful. I've seen the glimmers of something beautiful growing within the profession, a solidarity. And I'm not just talking about the union action, I'm talking about the way that we came together after the horrible Ofsted situation. And I think we are stronger if we're united, and that'll be my last take on that. Regardless of our opinions on this deal, let's be together in a sense, and stronger together is always a good thing. That's me. So I thought I'd like to say that before
we have more in common than that which divides us, and as teachers, we are members of one body, as an inspector once said. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us, and we shall see you next week for next week's Education Tonight, and we'll see you on Sunday for a weekly review as well. And make sure you catch up with all of our shows in the meantime. Before we do actually hang up, I may as well actually tell you what we do have lined up for Friday and Saturday. Give me one moment, please. Bobby Gibson is on at 11 a.m. tomorrow. I'm really looking forward to that.
The Good Doctor.
Sunday, Omar is back at 11 a.m. back on Twitter Spaces, and Maud is on at 5 p.m. as well, which I'm really looking forward to. So yeah, catch us for our shows the next few days, and we shall see you very soon. Take care, and a very good evening to you.
Good night, everybody.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.